Back in May, Paultons Park announced that for 2026 they are going to be opening a huge new roller coaster known as Drakon. And it's safe to say that it's been causing quite a bit of controversy amongst UK theme park enthusiasts. But why is that? From beautiful theming to a solid lineup of roller coasters, flat rides, and most recently an interactive dark ride, Paultons Park is widely regarded as one of the best theme parks here in the UK, and a park that can do very little wrong. However, the unveiling of their new for 2026 roller coaster back in May has caused a lot of controversy amongst UK enthusiasts, with many left severely underwhelmed and feeling as if the park have dropped the ball a little. Drakon is set to be the park's first thrill coaster as they attempt to branch out their family market to appeal to a wider audience of older children and teenagers. The ride is set to be part of a wider themed area known as Valgard, which is going to be Viking inspired, and there's a total investment of £12 million for the park. Before I get into discussing why this ride has caused so much controversy and sharing my personal thoughts on it all, it's best that we first of all start off with the basics and cover everything we know facts-wise about the attraction so far. So the ride is set to be a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter. It's going to feature a vertical lift and beyond vertical drop, and this ride is going to be the fourth Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter in the UK. As we currently have freestanding, we've got Soda Ride at Thorpe Park, we've got Rage at Adventure Island, and we've got Speed at Oakwood, which is currently SB&O due to the closure of Oakwood in March. However, there is talk of a buyer actually coming in to reopen Oakwood, but that's a completely separate video of its own. It is going to be a total of 75 foot tall, have a 1.25 metre height restriction, meaning that anyone aged around about 7 or older will be able to ride it, so they're very much looking for that first big thrill coaster here with this investment. The trains are going to feature over-the-shoulder restraints as opposed to lap bars, which you more commonly see on inverting roller coasters these days. The layout is a custom layout. It's relatively short, but it does feature 2 inversions, and it's the first roller coaster at this park to feature any inversions. It looks like we've got a dive loop and also a stall as well, which is going to be pretty cool. Stalls are actually some of my favourite inverting elements on any coasters. In particular, I really like the ones on Hyperia at Thorpe Park and Tutatis at Park Asterix. And the ride is going to be located at the back of the park next to Cobra, which, as part of the Valgard retheme, is going to be rethemed to Raven and obviously fit in with the surrounding Viking theming. And Drakon is actually going to interact with Raven, so when you go down the first drop, you're going to dive right underneath it. So why has Drakon proved to be so controversial amongst enthusiasts? To put it simply, it's because it's a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter, and 1, we have a lot of Gerstlauer Euro-Fighters already in the UK, and 2, a lot of enthusiasts aren't big fans of them. Consequently, the park have been asked a lot of questions and queries in response to this announcement, and fair play to them because they've actually been really transparent. Obviously, this announcement was made at the Superfans event by Lawrence, who is the marketing director of the park and part of the family that own the park, and he's also done an episode with Dan from Off the Tracks on their podcast discussing about the ride as well, and fair play has been really transparent in response to all the concerns. So the stuff I'm going to get into now, addressing all of that, is partially my thoughts and partially stuff that he stated and the park have stated publicly as well. So we'll start off by answering the question, why have Paultons Park chosen to go with a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter? Now, something very valid that Lawrence has actually stated in response to this question is that obviously the park have worked with Gerstlauer in the past. Cobra, set to be rethemed to Raven, is a Gerstlauer Bobsled coaster, which this ride is set to interact directly with, and that is going to be much more feasible and cheaper to do when you go with the same manufacturer, because obviously they're going to be aware of all the clearance envelopes and all that side of logistical stuff that needs to be accounted for when designing a ride to interact with it. Now, Gerstlauer Euro-Fighters are compact, and while it may look like there's a lot of space in that park, with it being empty currently, although it's now a construction site, but I know from when I've been there in the past, when you're walking around there, it looks like it's a huge amount of space, but as soon as you start erecting coasters in there and stuff. There's actually a lot less space than you think. And the park are actually set to open a water ride in that area as well for 2027, so it's going to be getting an expansion. So they're very limited for space, and Gerstlauer are brilliant when it comes to making compact coasters. I mean, look how small the footprint of Solar Ride at Thorpe Park is, for example. Another thing to take into account is the height restriction that these rides can have, which is obviously decided by the manufacturer. Gerstlauer tend to be quite lenient with their height restrictions. The provisional restriction is 1.25 metres. However, that isn't set in stone and could change once the ride has been erected and during testing, etc, etc. It all depends on the forces that are pulled. But Paultons need a ride with a relatively low height restriction. Despite the fact that this is meant to be a thrill ride, it's meant to be a transitional coaster. So it needs to be able to cater to, height-wise, your average child that's going to be going to Paultons Park. Their rides tend to have low height restrictions because they are family attractions, obviously. The only other thrill ride on park currently is Cyclinator. And if you were to put an attraction in with a 1.4 metre height restriction, a lot of Paultons' target audience, even if they wanted to, wouldn't be able to ride it, and you want to get as much ridership out of the attraction as possible. Gerstlauer are also a relatively cheap choice to go with as far as manufacturers are concerned. And you've got to remember, guys, Paultons are family owned. Much like Blackpool Pleasure Beach, they're not owned by a massive corporation like Merlin, and they do so well to install the attractions and areas that they have. I mean, they have some of the best theming in the UK, regardless of them being a relatively small business, but they do have to be smart with the cash. I think the fact that this entire area, and that includes the new ride set to open for 2027, and we don't know what that is yet. There's a lot of speculation it could be a Mack water coaster. I think it's so impressive that they've managed to keep the cost so low, and it's so much better to splash your cash on several rides, a restaurant, etc, etc, a whole themed area experience than just one ride. I wish Merlin would learn that. Hyperia, yes, it's the tallest coaster in the UK, but it's one ride with very minimal theming and stylisation that has set them back £18 million. Like, what the heck? So this is actually a really smart move by Paultons. They're installing multiple attractions for people of different ages to enjoy. They're installing a family attraction right next to it for the younger guest, which is going to be an art engineering wild swing. And when you've got something for all ages to enjoy, more people are going to visit the park, so they should get great return on investment. So now we've answered the question of why the park have decided to go with this ride type. Let's delve into some other concerns that have been raised in relation to that. The first of which being, why have the park decided to put over-the-shoulder restraints on this ride when that's very much a thing of the past to do? I mean, you look at other similar coasters that have opened recently that invert, such as the Wave at Drayton Manor, Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, Hyperia at Thorpe Park. They all have lap bars. The reason there's concern about this is because a lot of people find Gerstlauer coasters with over-the-shoulder restraints such as the Smiler and Solar Ride really rough. But Lawrence from the marketing team at the park has essentially addressed this by saying that at the end of the day, this coaster isn't intended to appeal to enthusiasts. It's intended to appeal to children who are transitioning, and just people in general who are transitioning from the family rides at the park to more thrilling attractions. So it is meant to be a stepping stone coaster. And from the market research the park have done, they found that a lot of people, especially parents putting the kids on the coasters, etc, would be more comfortable with a ride with over-the-shoulder restraints as opposed to a lap bar. Now, I'm a bit sceptical of this because obviously Drayton, for example, decided to go with lap bars for the Wave, and that coaster is intended to have a similar purpose and has a similar height restriction. But at the end of the day, you've got to do the logical thing and go with the data, haven't you? Paultons want people to ride this coaster. It's an expensive investment for them. So if the data indicates that more people are likely to ride it if it has over-the-shoulder restraints, then it makes sense to go with that. And the enthusiasts have also stated as well, and the park have stated this too, that Gerstlauer have modified the over-the-shoulder restraints that they use on their coasters since the instalment of the rides I've mentioned previously. And apparently they've also done some work in terms of the engineering of their coasters as well, and the wheel gaps, etc, etc. So the newer Gerstlauers with over-the-shoulder restraints do tend to ride a lot smoother. And let's face it, this is Paultons Park, the most well-kept park in the UK. They're going to look after this coaster. So I have no concerns whatsoever with how it's going to ride. Another major complaint with the coaster is that it's obviously unoriginal. There's 3 Euro-Fighters already in the UK. Why haven't the park gone with a model of coaster never seen in the country before? It'd be so much more marketable, right? Why not go with a Mack Striker coaster, for example? I mean, Lawrence even said in the podcast the park have a height limit of 25 metres because they're based in the New Forest. So the park would really suit a launch coaster. Why not go with an Intamin Hot Racer or something? A lot of people have been crying out for one of them in the country. At the end of the day, it's cost, isn't it? A ride from either Mack or Intamin or any other manufacturer would likely cost more than Gerstlauer. As I said, Gerstlauer are generally one of the cheaper manufacturers to go with, and with the park also set to get a water ride in 2027, and the area set to be home to the Wild Swing as well from Art Engineering, a restaurant, toilet facilities. It's a big investment, 12 million for a family park to make. So at the end of the day, I guess it's just a matter of they don't believe a coaster of that nature, when taking into account the additional costs, would bring the return on investment to make it worthwhile. Another major complaint is that the coaster's too short. I've been showing you throughout this video actually some shots of a recreation in Planet Coaster. Obviously we had the initial concept art that was released showing the entire ride, which people have obviously based that on, and then we also had the teaser as well, which showed a bit of an animated POV made officially by the park. But yeah, based on all of that, it definitely looks short. It doesn't look like anything spectacular, but at the end of the day, for that park, it's going to be a great addition. Don't expect the best coaster in the country. That's not the intention of the park here. They're branching out slowly into the thrill market. Maybe in 10 years' time, we will see a coaster that could be a contender for one of the best coasters in the UK. But currently, this isn't the time and place for that. And I think what they've come up with is fine. Again, you've got to take into account space as well. I forgot to mention this before actually, but behind where this area is set to be, the park are actually looking into building some accommodation. And then there's obviously the other rides and the restaurant that are getting built as well. So they've not got much room to work with. And another major concern expressed by a lot of people in regards to this obviously being a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter is the low capacity it's going to have. Obviously Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter trains can only seat 8 people. Therefore, yeah, I understand that, but Paultons Park, I have to say, is a very good park in terms of capacity, and the ride operators and ride hosts there are really quick at getting the trains out. It's definitely one of the best operated parks in the UK on that front. So yeah, I'm definitely expecting Drakon to build up some queues. I mean, it's going to be essentially the signature ride of that park, so it's going to be really, really popular. However, I'm sure the great operations across the park and the good capacity of other rides there should help relieve some of that waiting. And so that leads me on to giving my overall verdict. Is Drakon the right investment for Paultons Park? And honestly, as you can probably tell, I've been pretty defensive throughout this video. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Don't get me wrong, when I first saw the announcement, even I was a little bit underwhelmed and a little bit confused. Going back to Lawrence again, the marketing director, he actually went on another podcast last year done by Sean Evans from Lift Hills and Thrills, and he sort of teased the project and said that it's going to be something different to what the park have ever done before, and it's going to surprise people. And so I think off the back of that and just general teasing and talking from Paultons in recent years, people were expecting something more than this. Is a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter the coaster type I would have gone for Paultons' first thrill coaster? No, probably not. I would have probably gone for some sort of launch coaster such as an Intamin Hot Racer. I know I said that Intamin coasters are typically relatively pricey, which obviously isn't ideal for a small family business. However, with Hot Racers being single rail coasters, they do tend to be a little bit cheaper, and you do tend to see them at some of the smaller parks out there. One example being Luna Park in Australia. That looks like a great coaster, Big Dipper. But I can certainly understand Paultons' reasoning behind going for a Gerstlauer Euro-Fighter. I know I do often moan about certain decisions parks make, and that's often because I don't understand the reasoning behind them. If you just do something and give no explanation or transparency as to why, that's what gets me mad. But because Paultons have explained the reasoning behind the decisions, it all makes sense. So as much as I'm a little bit disappointed by the fact we're getting a Euro-Fighter when we already have so many in this country. I'm not mad about it at all. I completely understand why they've chosen to go for it. And Paultons are absolutely brilliant. As I've said numerous times already, they're one of the best, if not the best operated parks in the country, and they do things to such a high standard. This coaster is going to be incredibly themed, as is the overall area around it, because they're just amazing at that sort of stuff. But Drakon isn't going to be the only new addition to a UK theme park for 2026. Blackpool Pleasure Beach are set to open a huge 138 foot tall intamin gyro swing known as a Victus. To find out more about that, you want to go and check out the video on the right side of your screen. Click the icon on the left hand side of your screen to subscribe to the channel. I'm Ben, you've been watching ThrillNet, and I'll catch you again soon.